Miami, Ohio State, New Year's Eve, 7:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff, Cotton Bowl, Dallas. Ohio State lives in this building now. This one's fueled by Quick Trip. You could live in Miami. You may live in Columbus, or who knows, you may live somewhere between. You may be thinking about making the trip to Dallas. Do it. Just make sure you stop at Quick Trip on the way, fuel up, and then get ready, because I don't think this game is just your garden variety 9.5-point spread. There is a reason Ohio State has earned this reputation. Miami, theoretically, could be a way different team now than the one that lost to SMU, the one that lost to Louisville. That's what you want to be. You want to be peaking. And if you're peaking, you can draw clues off of a team's losses earlier in the year. But you also got to understand, if they're still that team, they wouldn't be here to begin with. So when I say not your usual 9.5-point spread, there are some rumors out there. Now, I don't know the validity of this, but Bradley, could we throw up the graphic for just a second? Friend of the program, old JBook. This is a direct quote from Twitter.com, courtesy of him. He said, "All I've heard all week is Ohio State doesn't belong on the same field as Miami. Miami supposedly has the better D-line, the better O-line, the better defense. Malachi Toney better than Jeremiah Smith. They've got the better run game, the better coach, the better quarterback. Ohio State haven't played anyone, and they're slow and soft." This is the kind of nonsense that leads to a team winning a national championship and then Nolan Smith getting on live TV and saying, "Yeah, man, people predicted us to go 7-5. I'm pretty sure they didn't, man. You're the University of Georgia. I don't think anyone predicted you to go 7-5. I don't think many people are predicting you to lose 5 games in the next 2 years combined." Likewise, who in the world said this? Who said this? Listen, I'm in some very exclusive Miami group texts. They're not even saying this. They may think they're going to win. They may have the orange and green glasses on. I haven't even heard this from them. So I doubt this is valid. But I do want it to be on the record. So let's dive in. I need to know about Ohio State. I do. I need to know about Ohio State. Here's what I need to know. Quite simple. Was the Indiana game the 2025 version of Michigan 2024? If it was, Ohio State's going to win the national championship. I have very little doubt about that. Remember what happened last year. They lost to Michigan. It was a crushing setback. It ended up being a huge blessing in disguise, at least in terms of winning the national championship. Now, people like me who value rivalry games over the playoff, I thought it was terrible no matter what. But most people out there, I'd say like 90% of the public, cares about the national championship more than rivalry games. So if your goal is to win the national title, Ohio State benefited from the Michigan loss last year. Is that what the Indiana game is going to end up being? They lost 13-10. They had 2 scoring opportunities late. They combined for 0 points on those scoring drives. I just rewatched the game today. Is that Ohio State's rubber band moment? Well, you can tell that they're very diametrically opposed scenarios here, because scenario A is we're right about that. And you'll know because Julian Sayin will come out in this game and he'll just be crisp and all those weapons will be in play, and Jeremiah Smith will have more damage done in the first quarter than he did the entire game, and they'll just be off to the races. And Miami will be down 20-6 at the half, and you'll be saying, man, Ohio State's just about to suffocate the life out of them, and this game's over at the half. That would be scenario A. Early lead, Miami pressure kind of neutralized. That's the first scenario. The second scenario is the same Julian Sayin that got sacked 5 times against Indiana finds himself on his back 3 times in the first half against Miami. And we find out that Miami really does have a 2-way edge on the line of scrimmage. And there is not enough time for Julian Sayin to sit there in a clean pocket and take advantage of the cap-buster passing plays that Ohio State, when they're clicking, has at their disposal. And then it's just a dogfight, and it may be the first to 17 wins kind of game. Miami had 7 sacks against A&M. So a little different kind of athletic profile here than anything that Ohio State's seen all year. And I'm not one of these dudes who sits around saying, oh, Ohio State hasn't played anyone. That's foolish. Yes, they have. They played Texas earlier in the year. They just played Indiana. They won one of those games. They lost the other games. Here's what's important. Ohio State has faced 2 top 20 defenses, and I just named them. Texas and Indiana. And they scored 14 points against one, and they scored 10 points against the other. So, in the scenario where the Indiana game really didn't trigger anything in Ohio State, it just went on to show us that they're a good but flawed team. That's what would happen. Could still beat Miami. They're favored by 9.5 for a reason, but it becomes a much different game if that's the case. So the first thing we got to learn is we got to learn who Ohio State is. Who is the playoff version of the Ohio State Buckeyes in 2025/6. Secondly, Carson Beck in a big game still needs to be someone Miami can trust. This is maybe the most important dynamic of this game, Carson Beck. Because the lasting image you have in your mind is of him and his passing game being non-existent against A&M. And I just want to tell you, until further notice, I'm going to consider that a little bit of an anomaly. I was on the field at that game, and I went back and watched the broadcast, and they did mention several times that it was windy. You cannot fully appreciate how big a factor wind played in that game and that wind played in the play calling in that game unless you were there. It was to the point where the uprights were moving. That's how windy it was. Unbelievable. Like, it was way windier than it was the night before at the Oklahoma game. And so once each defensive coordinator saw, hey, we can kind of handle the opposition here, nobody wanted to take the big risk. And Shannon Dawson didn't take the big risks with Carson Beck, which led many to believe, oh, dude, Carson Beck's just, he's kind of washed. He's kind of cooked. He's not Carson Beck anymore. Yeah, I think he is. And I think he'll play a really good game here. Now, a good game against Ohio State doesn't mean you throw for 380 and 4 touchdowns, but static conditions, he's going back to the same state, but that's about all this trip will have in common with the last trip. Because you get to play indoors, and it's going to be 72 and 0-mile-per-hour winds at kickoff. Carson Beck, just do the prayer hands emoji and look up and say, thank you. And then people are going to look at you like you're a little weird and you need to go back to work. So I think he's going to play a good game. Hey, quick time out here. Are you subscribed to the channel? It doesn't cost anything. It's free. Please do it. It helps us maintain the show at this level. That's it. That's all I got. Back to the clip. I don't think Carson Beck is going to be, like the handcuff behind the back to Miami's offense that many are making it out to believe he's going to be here. Now, having said that, this is still a really, really tough defense to go against. Because as much as I think weather played a factor the first time around, well, here's the trade-off to that. Yeah, you get much better conditions to work in. This is a much better defense than the one you just faced. So you're going to have to make it work. You're going to have to do the work. You got to show up. Carson Beck's got to show up here. Miami can run the ball, and I don't doubt that that's a central part of their game plan here, and they may have some success. Are you just going to run over Ohio State? No. Quarterback's got to make plays. That's what he's there for. That's what he's being paid for, which is not a sentence we said 5 years ago, but we're saying it right now. Someone beyond Malachi Toney's going to have to step up as well. He's a really, really good player, and they use him in a multitude of ways, and he will be an impact in this game. But it can't just be him. Elijah Lofton, that's the guy I'm circling here. That's the one. I'm a big fan of any Elijah tight end down there at Miami, as has been often noted. So, yeah, it's got to be a team effort there. Miami's style of play against Ohio State, there's going to be a lot made of this week. I think this will be the most physical team Ohio State's faced all year. I think this will be the most physical team Miami's faced all year. So there's two sides to that coin. And I think Miami really relishes, I think Ohio State really relishes this idea. Miami relishes the idea of the game turning into a fist fight. I don't think Ohio State shies away from that. Now, it really doesn't matter. Like, if one team has the edge there, one team has the edge there. Miami's going to have to prove they have the edge there. Like, people can talk about it all week. I can talk about it all week, whatever. I rarely see Ohio State take a backseat physically to anyone. So that may very well be the way Miami intends on winning this game, and it could be the way they do win the game. Who knows? I don't think it's going to be an easy task. So Miami's been the more mistake-prone team this year. Played a good game against A&M. They won. It wasn't without mistakes. I watch Ohio State most games that they aren't favored by 4 touchdowns in. They don't shoot themselves in the foot nearly to the degree that Miami has at times this year. I think until further notice, you've got to give the big staff edge to Ohio State just because they've got experience here. They've been here. I know the Miami staff very well. So I got all the respect in the world for the move Mario made to bring Corey Heatherman in has completely transformed that team. Shannon Dawson's a really, really high-level offensive mind. They haven't been here. Ohio State's guys have. Now, Ohio State is losing Brian Hartline to USF. Ryan Day's calling plays in this game. So there's kind of a unique dynamic both sides here. Quarterback experience edge, Miami. O-line versus D-line edge. This is going to get clipped. I know it is. I think the edge goes to Miami. D-line versus O-line edge. I think the edge goes to Miami. And yet here I sit with Ohio State as a 9.5-point favorite. I'm stunned the number opened that high. I'm stunned it opened that high because I am either wrong about what I just said, at which point this is moot. But if I'm right about what I said, and I'm not the only one who thinks that, so certainly there are other people out there thinking that, how often do you look and think one team has a two-way edge on the line of scrimmage and the experience edge at quarterback, and they're nearly a double-digit underdog? How often does that happen? It doesn't happen very often. Miami and Ohio State, I think both risk crowbar games here. The crowbar is just when whatever you're attempting to do offensively isn't working at all. We saw that kind of game between Miami and A&M. Now, the difference is Miami wore them down and they were able to run the ball. So they were able to win running the ball, whereas A&M hardly had anything going for them. We've seen Ohio State work themselves into that kind of game this year. Like Ohio State's record kind of masks what the reality has been in a couple of these games. The Texas game to start off with, but the Indiana game most recently, you're watching it and you're saying, man, they got all that firepower out wide. And they got how many points on the board with 2 minutes to go? It's happened to both teams this year. Could happen again. Here's the problem. I've been conflicted on this game all day. This is the one I was talking about. This is the one we started the show tonight with me not really knowing where I was going because I have many reasons that I want to pick Miami to win this game outright. I also picked Ohio State to win the national championship. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. FanDuel's got Ohio State minus 9.5. When I said this isn't your normal 9.5-point spread, I mean it in this way. Rarely is a number 9.5 on a big college football game, which means the value's been hammered out of the number. And I'm sitting here saying, oh man, this is up in the air. It's really up in the air for me. Clearly, I'll take Miami in the points. Clearly, I'll take them. I'll trust the having been there. I'll trust that angle. And I will take Ohio State to win. I trust Ryan Day. I trust him. That's all I have to say. I'm going to take Miami in the points, though. I can't believe that number came out that high. Yeah, that one I'm conflicted on. I know it's right now. It's Sunday. It's December 28th. We got 3 days until that game happens. I'm not against changing my mind midweek. It would be frowned upon, but it's not impossible.